Welcome to Grablives, everybody. Really appreciate everyone supporting and listening to this podcast. And just know that, your support is so important because we, the first responders, need so much support from you. And so this podcast as well, this podcast speaks to everyone on the verge of the front of helping people, but we need help. So if anyone can listen and subscribe to our YouTube account, giving us stars, commenting on things, and our Instagram page, each episode on Apple and Spotify, it really helps the algorithm to make sure this message gets out to other people. So it starts with us, the people. This is a people podcast, and it's about showing up for one another in order for this message to get out there. Other than that, just to start off with the disclaimer: everything we say and do does not reflect the City of Los Angeles Fire Department and Frontline Behavioral Wellness. This is this sponsor and partnership with Grablives and Frontline is so important that they keep the podcast going, and they help support with the audio equipment and the video equipment, and so many factors that play a role with the work they do and the work that this podcast is doing. So if you are inclined, just please check out what they have to offer. It's so important that this work that they offer is just really profound and helpful. So if you know anyone, if you're a spouse listening and you have a firefighter or a police officer that's your spouse, just check out what they have to offer. And if you're a firefighter or a first responder or a veteran yourself, check out what they have to offer. It's really simple. You just can either call their hotline or go to serahealth.com and see what they have. They have a ton of clinicians and a ton of different ways to treat anything that's going on. And if you need someone to talk to, they have a peer support group program in order to help you. If you don't use your own peer support group program through your own department, it's always important to start stacking your treatments and start stacking people to talk to in your circle. So one of the big things is they have a hotline. It's a 24/7 dedicated hotline to first responders, and it's 661-877-7241. Please reach out. They treat issues from addiction to depression to anxiety, whatever is going on, family life. Just check out what they have to offer, please. It's so important. Today, our next guest today is Hana, and she specializes in Chinese medicine, amongst many other things on her own healing journey. This episode was, it was so important to hear. For my own self, she helps with womb healing for women. She looks at health from an entirely different way of seeing it, and her personal story with her own personal journey of healing was it was so touching, and I almost broke down in tears listening to her talk because it was so there's so much depth to who this woman is and how she's inspired other people to find that healing. So please listen in on this really, really powerful episode on Chinese medicine and how we can find healing in our own journey with ourselves. Thank you so much for listening. Like I said before, please support us. It is so important, and I just want to thank you. So I love you guys. Later. Welcome, everyone. Today, I have a beautiful guest here, Hana K'KOA.
Happy to be here.
I said that right. So I made sure of it. I'm not butcher her name, but yeah, she's coming on here to talk about health and different ways of what we can find healing through the healer's journey, which once you've gone through that journey, it's a never-ending journey. It's a never-ending process. It's always about finding the center in the way we can find who we are through this process as well in order to help other people. And that's what this is about ultimately. It's about helping each other through our own limitations, our own sufferings of what we can refer to it as, and the struggle of life. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's the thing. And we want to bring light to that idea, is that the struggle's real when you're in it, but it's always being the greatest teacher of what we're coming across, these lessons in our life. And it's going to always, always show you the truth of who you are. And as we go through this conversation, I just really want to honor Hana for just her efforts in being here today. And our guests on Grablives are so, so important to us, and sending the message to first responders and firefighters, because we all want to find some type of way of seeking things beyond what Western medicine has shown us and Western idealizations of things, because there's more to it. And, some of this comes from my own personal findings through my own personal journey. And, collaborating with everyone since this podcast has started is tremendous, how people have come from the woodwork to bring their stories of how they found healing. And I just want to put a really huge disclaimer out there that we're getting away from the stigma of the woo-woo or the hippy-dippy things here. You need to be open to listen to some of the ancient teachings of what's been beyond what has been referred to as Western medicine, and the healing that has not really worked and has shown up as always a dead end. When you go to a doctor, and all the firefighters out there who know the system, it's a cycle, a never-ending cycle of prescription medication and a dead end at the ER. So we want to really bring in some insights on all this. So I'm going to introduce Hana, or have her introduce herself and talk about her own healing journey and so forth.
Yeah, thank you again so much for having me. And, just to put it out there again, I know we've spoken about it before, but I'm an open book. And it's one of the things that I tell everyone who I meet and who I work with and who's curious about this, that part of my role, part of my responsibility is being as open and vulnerable as I possibly can be. And that doesn't always come naturally or easily, but I believe that when we've gone through what you and I have and what so many people have, there is a responsibility to share what we know and what we've healed from, and to do so in a way that is authentic and honest, and it does get easier little by little. So every conversation I have makes it more simple and is, progressively a blessing. But yeah, I'm happy to be here today. So ask all the questions. We'll get into all the things. There's no shyness and no shame. But just brief background on me. I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner, an acupuncturist by training. Have my master's in Chinese medicine, and my background's actually in Western medicine as well. So my approach is unique, and it's holistic, and it's rooted in many different forms of ancient medicine. And I love what I do. I love who I am, and I love sharing this medicine.
Oh, it's really, I love the way you present the idea of authenticity and being open and vulnerable, because those are the keys to how we, seek the highest parts of ourselves from a more of like instead of a horizontal way of seeing things in a linear perspective, it's vertical. We go up into the higher parts of ourselves to seek more and more and more. And that identity with us brings forth like the authenticity, and the value in that is it really speaks volume without saying words. I didn't know you had a master's degree in Chinese medicine. That's really fascinating. And, I think traditional Chinese medicine has shown me a tremendous amount of understanding the elemental self, and also understanding how things are supposed to be into balance. And there's not necessarily the key word people want to find healing, right? But it's all about this balancing act. And, things can come and shift in so many different ways, even with the seasons, which is really interesting. And also with understanding your own personal blueprint. We are all individually different, and in essence, with like a idea of a snowflake. Like snow will fall, and the snowflakes have a distinct design that is different when collectively it's doing the same thing, right? But it has its original authenticity of what brings forth what we have. And the design is, it is cosmic, it is divine, of which we are. And we have to realize what that is in order for us to acknowledge our own self-worth, our own self-power, and go beyond with that. But it takes a little bit of that deeper work to get to that point. And, traditional Chinese medicine is super fascinating. I mean, you can dive deeper and deeper into it, and it goes so far. I'm still learning from, my different teachers and things like that. When I get my own acupuncture done, it's always a learning part for me to be vulnerable and open with whatever's being taught to me, whatever imbalances I have. So, aside from that, I'd love to hear, how did you come across, your own healing journey and what brought you to, your path? And that story is really valuable to me, and I'm assuming everyone else is listening.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and also just that was beautifully put. Not everyone really understands the true nature of Chinese medicine, because I think you've mentioned it before in one of your past podcasts, just around how we get so distracted by the symptoms that oftentimes we don't realize that there's a root cause that is really responsible for what you're experiencing in the physical, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual imbalances in your life. And the reason why, I mean, I love Chinese medicine. Like it's my medicine, and my mission is always to make it accessible, but it's very much about things being out of balance or in balance, and learning like what is your unique form of balance and how do you bring that into harmony, knowing who you are uniquely as an individual. And the reason why it's so incredibly effective in comparison to many modern medicine approaches is because it really sees you for who you are, and it is highly, highly individualized. So a big piece of what I do is awakening people to their individuality, their individual needs, and learning how to release that comparison to other people or expectations or societal pressures, whatever it may be, and instead rediscover, as we talked about briefly, like what it means to really be their authentic selves. So with my own journey, it was a long one. So I'll do my best to keep it relatively short, but we can talk about whatever. So it started young. I fell out of a 2-story window when I was 3 and almost died. And after that, I developed a fainting disorder, and I would faint and have seizures with growing frequency as I got older and older. So, we explored all the routes. My mother is Chinese, so we went the Chinese medicine route. We went the Western route. We saw so many doctors and so many practitioners, and I was in and out of the emergency room and hospitals and specialist offices, trying to hone in on what's going on with me and how do we fix this. And it kind of snowballed over the years and over time, and what ended up happening was, I'm sure that you can relate to this, as can anyone who's struggled with something like an injury or an accident, is that it starts to permeate into other areas of your life and your health. Mm-hmm. So for me, it really impacted not only my physical health, but also my emotional well-being, my sense of confidence, my social health, because there were certain things that I felt I couldn't do because it was essentially a disability, and I couldn't do a lot of the things that regular kids did. But being who I am, I'm a pretty tenacious person, always was a pretty tenacious kid, and pushed past it and began pushing far beyond my physical limits. But because I always felt like there was something, quote unquote, wrong with me, I was very antisocial. There was always this wall up because I felt like there was this, almost like this secret, like this thing that I was so ashamed of and so embarrassed of that I didn't really let people in. So as I got older, that became more pronounced, and it really magnified, and it affected my friendships, my relationships, and ultimately, my mental and emotional well-being. So we really searched for years and years and years trying to figure out what was going on. And one doctor after another just kept saying, like, some people just faint. Some people just have seizures. There's not really anything that we can do for you. So with that in mind, though, like, it sparked this fascination and this passion for self-healing. So at a young age, I was very, very interested in nutrition. I grew up seeing acupuncturists, massage therapists, energy workers. I had a fascination with more ancient forms of healing, like herbalism and like Hawaiian forms of healing, the la'au lapa'au. And it just sparked this lifelong passion for exploring different traditions of healing in an effort to heal myself first and foremost. But of course, I was human. I am human. I was a kid, and I made a lot of mistakes and a lot of poor choices along the way. And by the time I got to college, I was just a mess. Like, I did my best, but I was fainting 2 or 3 times a week, and it made it hard to function. It made it hard to go to school, but I pushed myself and made it through my undergraduate, which was in pre-med, and it just, I don't know if anyone else can relate to this, but I feel that they can. Like, it was just that feeling of hopelessness and wondering, like, is anything ever going to change? I felt like I had tried every single diet, every exercise routine. I'd seen every acupuncturist, every healer. Like, I'd read so many books starting at age 8. And here I was in my early 20s feeling like nothing I did made a difference. Nothing I did mattered. And then I was in a series of abusive relationships and was sexually assaulted by a man who followed me home from school one day. And it was like the last straw. So I think about that time and just the hole that I found myself in, not just physically. Like, physically, everything in my body hurt. I was in so much pain and so exhausted and struggling with hormonal imbalances and chronic migraines and digestive issues, IBS, like severe anxiety and depression. And there was a moment when I was curled up on the floor in the bathroom and I was ready to end my life. I just didn't want to be here anymore. I didn't want to struggle anymore. And it was an overwhelming feeling of my life is worthless. Like, I'm not worth anything. I don't deserve to be here. Like, I don't feel anything. My particular brand of emotional imbalance was just to be numb. So for me, it made it so that I couldn't connect with other people. I couldn't let them in, even though I have the most wonderful family in the world. And I had wonderful people in my life, I couldn't feel their love. And it's funny because I hear from people so often, like, I had no idea. You always seemed okay. And I think it's because it's years and years and years of wanting to come across like there's nothing wrong, wanting to come across like everything is perfect and that I'm okay and no one needs to worry about me, and not wanting to have anyone else try to take control of my life. To me, it was always like, if I admitted that there was something wrong, then someone else is going to come in and try to tell me what to do. And I want to do this for myself. I want to figure this out for myself. So basically, everyone fuck off and like leave me alone so I can figure it out. So ultimately, I was blessed enough to end up at an ayahuasca retreat. And again, at this point, my God, I had tried everything. I know that there are so many people who can relate to that feeling of just like, I'm desperate. Like, I will try anything. I will do anything. But it really was just a series of, circumstances and alignments that led me to the jungle. And I was 24. I'm 32 now. I went to Machu Picchu alone, and I spent several weeks there, and then I went to the Amazon and worked for the first time with a maestro and stayed there for several weeks and just surrendered. I opted to do no research beforehand. It was just that feeling of, I'm going to go. And this was back in was it 2015 or 2016? So back then, you couldn't talk about this with anyone. Mm-hmm. It was not something that was spoken about in the US especially. I remember telling my mom, she was the only person who knew what I was doing. And she told me very specifically, do not tell anyone else. Do not talk about this. It will impact your career. It will impact the way that people look at you. And this is not something that you can speak about. You can tell me all about it. This is coming from like my extra hippie mother. Like the woman is the most accepting person in the world, but very clear and so much fear around being judged. So that's the thing about healing, is that it oftentimes happens behind the scenes, in the dark, internally, until we feel strong enough and rooted enough in our own beliefs, our own practices, our own journey to then start to share it with other people. But those first 5 ceremonies were rough. The first 15 ceremonies were rough. I think every ceremony has its own particular brand of suffering, but I really, I went for it, and I put it all out on the table and just made a choice at that time to surrender all of my pain, all of my trauma, all of my perceived limitations and baggage, and just began the process. But yeah, that first year coming back to the US afterwards was, I think, one of the most challenging years of my life. It's something that I don't think people talk about quite often enough. They may have an ayahuasca ceremony and say, like, it changed my life. It was so enlightening. Like, I just really saw myself. It was really, really difficult, but it was so magical. But so often people come back and they either lack the support or they lack the knowledge or the education that it's not just about what happens in ceremony or what happens in the jungle. It's about, how are you shifting your life when you get back? How are you ensuring that everything in your life, your relationships, your career, your living environment, how do you make sure that it all supports your healing process? So I got home to Hawaii and I looked at this life that I had spent so many years creating, and I just realized that I was the one piece that didn't really fit into the puzzle anymore. And that first year was so painful because, again, it's not just about letting go of blockages and emotional trauma. It requires us to take just radical responsibility for our life. And I looked at my life, and even though I had this beautiful life in Hawaii, it wasn't it for me. So I left my job, left my relationship, left my family, left everything. And then I spent the next 8 years unraveling all of the patterns and all of the complex webs that I'd woven over the previous 24 years to finally just be free and to be myself and be how I am now. So there's a lot more to it, but at least that's, I'll leave you with that for now. Yeah.
Wow. I just want to take a second to really honor you for just your just audacity and resilience, for taking on everything and surrendering to yourself. You know, that is what the healing journey is. And you know, I just really love to just highly respect women who step into that divine self. And it's so powerful. And one of my mentors had mentioned to me that we are in an age right now of what has been referred to as the age of Kali, who is the archetype from from Hinduism. It's a Hinduism deity, and Kali is referred to as the destroyer, the divine feminine. And the story goes, and I'm going to shorten this, but Kali is this destroyer who just starts going on a rampage and burning everything and ripping the heads off all the men. And the concept is that as this divine feminine comes through and is destroying everything. If the men don't match up to that same frequency, she'll take your head.
Yeah.
And that is the age we are in right now. And the rise of that divine feminism is really powerful. And it doesn't go into femininity or the liberal feminism we're seeing right now. It's about stepping into the power of unity together with the divine masculine and divine feminine. And that is what we're seeing at this time. And I just want to, this is all the teachings I've just received from all my different mentors who show me certain things and archetypes and ideas of things that are coming up right now in this age of what we're seeing. There's massive change that's occurring right now underneath our feet. So, I mean, your story is so profound, and I relate to it so much. And I just want to, kind of briefly describe the Chiron and what that is. And Chiron is this, it's an archetype from Greek mythology. He's a centaur. And the story in short is that he is wounded by an arrow from Hercules. And he is going into this place because he's immortal. And yet he's poisoned by this arrow from like the blood of Hydra, and he cannot heal from it. So he goes into a cave to heal himself. And so that is the process of healing, is that he has to go alone into this cave to find healing from a wound that's been deemed unhealable. And so this archetype story is really beautiful because it is about going into the wound and finding healing by opening it up even more. And so a lot of times that's the way this works is whatever wounds we carry, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, whether it's spiritual, you have to go into it in order to open it up, to see what it's teaching you, to see what's unraveling underneath. In that space, we find healing. And in that healing space with us, we're able to heal other people through our stories. And that's why we're all here, is to do that. And that story later down the road is that, Zeus is able to give him mortality in order for him to die. And he's given a gift to be sent to the stars. And that's the story of it. And part of the story too is that in order for him to die, he is giving Prometheus freedom. That's the way it kind of goes. And Prometheus is another archetype. I have this Prometheus tattooed on my arm because Prometheus is about, he tricked Zeus and stole fire from him to give it to civilization, for them to have industry, to have civilization. And the power of that rebellion to give to other people was what Prometheus stood for. And that's kind of like this whole story plays this beautiful role in how we all are interacting with one another, and how that sacrifice that Chiron had was almost like this Christ itself, the sacrifice of unconditional love to release the freedom for someone else. And it's just a beautiful story how this all kind of plays a huge role with each other, and how we hold hands in this march with one another to stand for what's right, and to also stand for our own healing and do our own inner work, because it plays a huge role on a quantum level. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it. And ayahuasca has become somewhat of a trend. You see it online now. People have gone to Peru or whatever and done these healings through this medicine. And I just want to reiterate that this medicine is very sacred. And the fact that it's been used for thousands of years for healing to be done. And it is not an easy process because, like I had mentioned, that wound has to be opened. And that's what this medicine will do. It'll open you up to see what's lying underneath. And whether it's a belief system, whether it's repressed emotion, whether it's an identity crisis that you've carried underneath, whatever it may reveal to you. And so what's beautiful about it as well is through that surrender, it is a paradox on which the way it works. And if you can see the lesson and the teaching behind it, always ends up being somewhat of a paradox. And if we can just grasp the courage for ourselves to even try to do something like ayahuasca, there's a cosmic piece to it that has been referred to as the other side of the cosmic coin, because these indigenous people are survived in the rainforest, the Amazon jungle, that is one of the hardest places to be and survive in. And they use this medicine as a means to connect to it rather than to try to survive, which is the paradox to that, which is, I mean, it's just quite amazing the things that occur in the medicine. I mean, you hear about people having these cosmic celestial surgeries that happens that rewires the brain or removes matrix codes within inside someone's energetic body. So one part of this too is recognizing that we have an invisible self, and we spend so much time trying to fix the external self, when in the end we have to put our eyes and our concepts on the invisible self of who we are. And that's what Chinese medicine plays a role in, is to the energetics of things and to the intelligence of who we are. And you have to change your perspective from the external things, because the external things, the symptoms, the imbalances that are showing up, the underlying part is really revealing something deeper. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So I may have mentioned it at the beginning. I did. I'm trying to remember. We've talked about so much already. At the beginning, I mentioned that it's always my mission to make Chinese medicine accessible. And because there is such depth to it, you can go down a rabbit hole. I've been studying Chinese medicine my entire life, and formally for the last 8 years. It can go so deep. And one of the things I always say is that I'm both very practical and deeply spiritual. Things have to be practical and accessible in order for us to actually make use of them. So I'm very much rooted in, it's like having a foot in both worlds, like I've spent months in the jungle, and I've occupied that world and that space that is the invisible realm to the average eye. But I'm also rooted in this world. And again, I take a lot of responsibility in that, You mentioned something in one of your other podcasts as well, around combo, and how that medicine emerged from the jungle because it was ready to help people heal outside of that realm and outside of that space. And that's very much how I feel about ayahuasca. The last time we were there for 6 weeks, and one of the messages that came through was, it's time to bring this medicine to your world. And I was like, I don't want to do that. That sounds really hard. I don't want to be met with the criticism and the harshness and the judgment and just all of the resistance that comes with, I don't know what you were saying about Kali, that comes with needing to shift the paradigm. Just the sheer amount of effort it takes to destroy a system that isn't really working in order to create space for a system that does work to really emerge and blossom. So it was a back and forth conversation with the medicine being like, are you sure? She was like, yeah, I'm fucking sure. I've done everything for you. It's your turn. I'm okay, so here we are, which is again why I appreciate that you are speaking about this so openly. You could look at where you live and what you do and what the expectations are around it, but your willingness to speak so openly about the things that have profoundly impacted you is inspiring. That is the point of this work. And that's the point of us working on ourselves, is that it's not just about us. It's about how do we then ripple so that other people, so that everyone can heal as well. We're the origin point of that ripple. So with Chinese medicine, yes, I love the more profound philosophical, spiritual, esoteric aspects of it. That speaks to something deep within me, and it is a privilege when I'm able to get to that place with people where we can really talk about it. But one of the things that I always emphasize is that let's start with the physical. Let's start with your body. Let's learn how to read your symptoms. Let's learn how to read your body like a map. And as a diagnostician, as an acupuncturist, I take great interest in everything that a person has to share with me or wants to share with me, from every last one of their symptoms, their emotional imbalances, their relationships, their career, their living environment, because this is what creates this dynamic matrix that helps me identify where the imbalance is actually coming from. So if I'm seeing physical imbalances, I start to connect the dots and say like, okay, you've got low back pain and a low hum of tinnitus and reproductive issues and chronic urinary tract infections. Like you have sores in your inner canthus that pop up periodically. Like what is going on with this person? And how do I utilize those physical symptoms to help me look deeper? So when I work with people, like when you're in pain, it is not easy to talk about the emotional or the spiritual or the mental. Oftentimes with physical pain, it's just like, I just don't feel good. Like, please make the pain go away. Like, please help me out of this pain. And it's funny because I always talk about everything with everyone. I tell people, I'm like, just tell me everything and we'll sort through it and make sense out of the chaos. But I always start with your physical body. How are you nourishing yourself? How are you moving your body? How's your sleep quality? And getting this clear picture, because the physical body is this manifestation of our mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. So you're able to slowly peel back those layers and see someone clearly. And I remember my maestra saying this to me specifically. The body follows the mind follows the spirit. So if you're seeing pain in the body, you have to ask yourself what's going on in the mind, what's going on in the spirit. And when I think about my own journey and just the physical imbalances that I was dealing with, when I began to look deeper, because I finally began to heal my physical body, when I began to look deeper, it made it evident that there was something at the core that really needed to shift, that really needed to heal. And we've talked about suffering. I remember in my master's, we were talking about what we wanted to specialize in. And, you know, people said, I want to specialize in sports medicine or women's health or, you know, like chronic digestive issues, chronic pain, whatever it may be. And just the only thing that came to mind, because I love it all, but I was like, I want to specialize in suffering. Like, I want to, because I had experienced such a depth of suffering, no more than the average person. But, you know, frankly, like it was a tough 20 plus years. And I had a moment about a year ago where I was reading through this book on Hawaiian herbal medicine, and each of the chapters was titled in Hawaiian, and I saw the title of one of the chapters was Kahana, and it said like the treatment, the cure, to heal. And I'd never seen that translation of my name before. And it was one of those moments that just struck me to my core, because names in all cultures, I believe, are very significant. But in Hawaiian culture, they're incredibly significant because they define the path that this child takes in their life. And I realized that my parents had, maybe not intentionally, but, you know, there'd been some sort of divine intervention. They'd sent me down this path to suffer, because I believe that in order to truly heal, in order to cure, in order to treat, in order to support other people, we have to navigate our own suffering and own that and see that and learn from it and appreciate it for what it is. So like the only reason why I'm able to do what I do now is because at every turn, you know, in the 30 plus Aya ceremonies I've been in and my own personal experiences in life and with combo and with all these things that just test you on all these different levels, is that I know what it means to suffer. So I'm able to support other people in their suffering as well.
That's so well put. And, you know, when you're in the suffering, you know, it feels like death. It feels like the end.
It is death.
Yeah,
it's little deaths.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, there's a part of the evolution of the human self that we don't quite understand, and it's a cyclic place of this death and rebirth process. And we're going through these moments of that suffering. You know, it is not the end; it is the beginning of something new. It's because something is being birthed at that moment. So when something is being birthed, the way universal law and natural order works is that something has to leave in order for something to come in. So in that process of shedding or releasing, we are attached and hold on to these things that no longer serve us any longer. But it's a painful process to have that part of you being shed or released. And that is the suffering, is the attachment to it. And if we can see it like that, we realize that we hold on to these things that do not belong any longer. We almost get addicted to the suffering and the negativity, the negative thoughts. And I think that's the paradigm we have to exclude ourselves from, is to not be addicted to the negative parts any longer. And when you realize that you're the one causing your own suffering, then you have this light bulb that pops up. You're like, okay, I understand this now. It's me. And that comes with taking ownership and responsibility for oneself. And I truly believe this part of mental health crisis we're dealing with, especially for first responders, is that you have to take ownership. You have to take responsibility, and don't blame the circumstances, the administration. Don't blame anything any longer. You have to look at yourself and take that ownership, because that's the start. And once you do that, it takes a great courage to move the things around the way, even down to your thoughts, the way you perceive your reality, the way you see who you are. And that's the choice you have to commit yourself to change. Yeah. And it's a very difficult thing to do at some point. And then once you realize that that's the answer, then you can move forward, and then you can find happiness. And, it's interesting you bring up that parallel to the body, the mind, and the spirit, because that's what we're seeing now. Is there's a psychological, biological, mental, spiritual approach that's being addressed right now by many clinicians in this field of work, who are dealing with all the suicide ideation that's coming up within police departments, fire departments, dispatchers, because that's the only way. You have to take a complete dynamic approach towards it, because it's not just one slice of the pie that's being addressed here. It's all of it in its entirety. And it's not just excluded included to just firefighters and police officers. It's all of us, but I think there's a certain aspect to us who are serving the people, who we have to be good. How can we show up if we're not good? If we're not feeling, because chronic pain is one of the biggest issues right now, not sleeping. So that's what we're finding, imbalances that are completely across the board. Everyone has the same shit, But one of the things too is like being in the body is one of the most important aspects. And even going into my own studies with Zen Buddhism and reading through Alan Watts' teachings on Taoism, Buddhism, the Buddha speaks that an enlightenment starts with the body, and you cannot get further unless you find that first. And so with that, I'm not saying that I'm this devout Buddhist, and people have asked me, hey man, are you a Buddhist or something? And the answer is no. I think through my own just learnings through all aspects of trying to find balance for myself, the Buddha spoke to me because it's about liberating the mind from suffering. And that is the teaching of the Buddha, to understand the great concept of what he came to do. And the Buddha just speaks that it means the enlightened one. He was able to go through his own suffering and his own path of healing in order to find that. And every great teacher has done that. It's him or herself. And what's interesting too is like that archetype of the Chiron has been other certain people who've instilled that peace, like Mother Teresa and Viktor Frankl. And if you don't know who Viktor Frankl is, he is this.
You read one book this week, Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah.
Yeah, so I read that book, Man's Search for Meaning, years ago, and he was in the concentration camps. He was, a Jewish psychiatrist, and he was able to find his survival through finding meaning for himself, as people were being dying from whatever it was, whether it was just from getting whipped, or in the gas chambers, or through just malnourishment. He was able to pull through the power of the mind, and which was really powerful and to understand. I don't know where I was going with all that,
Yeah.
but it's part of like this whole process we have to take individually. This individual part, you're talking about that focal point with this ripple effect that's happening. And each person individually are the focal point. And as that ripple effect creates this small pebble within the pond, you realize that if there's multiple pebbles within the pond, you're going to have a massive turnover. And that's what's important is each person taking that aspect, the courage to do their own healing is going to really make volume along the way for everyone else to be inspired, to be not victims any longer, but to really take that path of the self to reach. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, I was listening to one of your previous podcasts, so I know that suicidal ideation is something that you struggled with as well, and that many people in your field and many people out there in general, at some point in their life, they may struggle with that, especially if you've had chronic pain, especially if you've had a brain injury, especially if you've just been so down and out in some way, shape, or form for an extended period of time. But speaking about Viktor Frankl, there has to be meaning in who you are, and meaning in your suffering, and meaning in your journey. And that was that moment for me, even as recent as last year. Even though it's like you feel that, it was that moment of like, holy shit. Like every last thing that I've been through has had meaning, because it has led me to who I am now, to the place where I am in a position where I can be of service to other people and really support them and really help them. And think about, I mean, I don't know you that well, but it's like, think about everything that you've created, the number of people you've impacted just by virtue of you truly suffering and then finding the meaning in that, going through that healing process, being willing to explore things that other people want to do but are so terrified that they can't even touch it. So if there's meaning to each of our lives, which I absolutely believe, life is a miracle. It doesn't always feel like that, but when you look into what it takes for someone to be born into this world and for them to live and for them to exist, and not just, I mean, even just to survive is a miracle in and of itself, let alone thrive and flourish. But how could you not have meaning? How could you not be absolutely necessary? And that was a message that came through for me in meditation many years ago when I was struggling. It was like, who you are and what you do is necessary. And we're like these individual cells within a body, and we all have a very specific, very unique function that needs to be fulfilled. But in Chinese medicine, you discover your calling in life by overcoming a very unique theme of challenges. You don't get to live in alignment with your calling if you haven't been challenged, if you haven't met obstacles, if you haven't been, if you haven't struggled, if you haven't been beat down in some way, shape, or form, because you don't really know yourself. You don't know what you're made of. You don't know how resilient you are until you've been challenged. So you look at all of these different myths across time and creation stories and examples of like true sacrifice and true suffering. I even think about like Jesus and needing, God sacrificing his only son and the necessity of that in order for him to be reborn. And with it came the rebirth of an entire new age. And Buddha was like that for me too. I read Deepak Chopra's Buddha when I was really young. My mom is just a prolific reader, and bless her, she's very spiritual. Both of my parents are. But that was one of the books that I read in early childhood. And it just touched me so deeply when he wrote, like, all life is suffering. And even at a young age, I was like, what the hell does that mean? Like, I thought life was supposed to be magical and beautiful. And it's realizing that it's both. It's like it's through our suffering, through the experience of our struggles, the pain that we experience physically, the pain of heartache and loss and unhealthy attachment and having to detach ourselves from something and witnessing death and witnessing rebirth. Like it's through this path of suffering that we become deeply in touch with what it means to live a beautiful, magical, purposeful, mystical life. Like that's the magic.
I'm so happy you bring up that idea of magic, because it is the wonder that brings us, to that place of being free, from the suffering. And at some point, there has to be a shift within you to instill that wonder within and the creative self, because I truly believe we are creator beings that are born within this divine self, that we are a piece of the divine, of which we manifest that creator being. We are creators working in tandem with the great creator. And if we don't realize that, how are we supposed to have that self-empowerment to move past those obstructions, those blockages that are only there, that are predetermined to show us the truth, to show us the life we're supposed to live. And a lot of times it takes a great effort to zoom out a little bit, to take perspective of all the paths that are being shown or being brought forth in front of you, because there is an ultimate part to us that we work within to kind of choose the paths we go on, but it always leads to the same destination or the same marker in our lives. It's going to create a part for us that's going to have us determine, okay, I also can suffer through this, but it's a choice, and it's hard to, when you're in it, it's hard to choose the higher road per se, but sometimes it's okay to be in it as well and just suffer and be in it and just feel that depth of what we can feel, and that was one powerful point for me when I was in a meditation, and I had broke down with myself because I was so much in gratitude of my own suffering that I was able to feel so deeply. And that was a point when I was just able to gratify myself beyond the suffering. And that's another paradox in itself. I was having the gratitude because I was suffering, and I was able to liberate myself from it in that moment, Yeah. So I'm really happy you brought up even like the idea of a map per se, right? Because, when I went through my concussion stuff and the symptoms that were coming up for me, I started just grabbing onto books of different things to help myself. And I had grabbed this, it's called the Subtle Energy Encyclopedia. And so I started studying the subtle body, and because I was getting really limited, all these dead ends of all doctors I was seeing. And I was like, I had enough of it. I was like, I'm going to take care of my own health and do my own knowledge, my own research in order for me to heal myself, because ultimately that's what it came down to. And so the Subtle Energy Encyclopedia was it mapped out the body, and it's a grid system as well as these energetic pieces that are linked up to almost a software. It is a software, we are these organic computers that align to these intelligent centers of the body that had a lot to do with emotional imbalances. If it wasn't going to be an injury or anything like that, it was mostly attached to that, and how each energy center was linked with the tissues of the body in that frequency, along with the organs of the body in that area, and the hormones as well that are interacting along a frequency or a wavelength of that operating center that was in tandem with everything else that was aligned within the energetic body. And so when you're speaking of a map, I want everyone to understand this is what she's talking about, is this part of an intelligence center that's been, defined by ancient cultures, from the Mayans to the Russians to the Eastern Hinduisms. And it's not just a religion, it's from Ayurvedic medicine into ancient Chinese cultures. They all mapped this out. And then once we, landed on America, it all changed because we trusted America and the revolutionizing of freedom through this land we live on. But we forgot the important aspects of health through these ancient teachings that really, really help. So apart from that, I think what is the main theme you see with people finding healing with themselves, if you don't mind going? I know it's such a hard way to go into that, but I know you also specialize with women and womb healing. So if you don't mind going into a bit of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So I specialize in women's health, which isn't something I ever expected to do. I love women, but I had a very challenging relationship with women growing up. And so, of course, with it being the challenge, it's also the calling. So I work with women. in a very holistic way. Just kind of based on everything that we're speaking, the big thing that I emphasize with women is that you need to be able to heal yourself. You need to have this information for yourself so that you do not have to rely on me, on doctors, on pharmaceuticals, on anyone else when it comes to something that is well within your capabilities to address and to heal. So yes, like I'm an acupuncturist, I'm a healer. It's who I am and what I'm blessed with, but I really consider myself more of a teacher. I love to teach. I don't know if I'd say that I'm a teacher, but I love to teach women how to heal themselves holistically, primarily through Chinese medicine, but with a background such as mine, it's never going to be pure Chinese medicine. You know, there's a lot of influence from what I've learned in my apprenticeship with Maestra Estella down in at Ay Madre in Peru. But what I work with women on is primarily hormonal imbalances, but it's really much more about learning how to harness your hormonal cycle in order to facilitate healing. So I give women the skills, the knowledge, the tools, the education in Chinese medicine in order to make necessary shifts in their life to become their own healers. Really, like at the core of what I do, it's about awakening your inner healer. So the first month is entirely devoted to their physical well-being. They learn about the 5 different phases of their hormonal cycle, which mirror the 5 different elements of Chinese medicine. They learn the correct foods, herbs, movements, sleep patterns, sexual relationships, workflow, in order to optimize their physical health. And that alone, just that physical component alone, is deeply transformative and effective where absolutely nothing has worked for these women. I believe that both men and women are largely underserved. I hear so often like women don't have enough resources. I'm like, I don't think men or women do. But in this particular case, there is a severe deficiency of education around women's health and what it truly means to heal. So often women come to me because they are desperate, because they have been told by one doctor after another that there's nothing that they can do. Here, take this pain medicine. Here, take this birth control. Surgery is your only option. Hysterectomies are your only option. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. So it made me mad, honestly. It was so many women coming to me in chronic pain, having suffered extraordinarily with their hormonal well-being, which has affected their fertility, their relationships, because it impacts their libido. And consequently, I went on a rampage. I feel like Kali, and to go back to your description, like I went a little bit nuts about 7 years ago because it just didn't sit right. So just that first month alone, it's a deep education in what you need to do, and then having the support from me to actually put it into action, having the accountability, having me to ask questions, like individualizing their approach based on their unique constitution, which Chinese medicine recognizes 5 primary, but I recognize 81 specific constitutions. And then the second month is all about the emotional. So women, it has to, like I said, it has to be accessible. It has to be small, bite-sized amounts of information and actions that they can follow through on every single day. If we don't follow through on something, if it's not doable, then we won't do it, you know? Maybe for a little bit we'll try, but we lose motivation, we lose steam, we lose hope, we get frustrated, we hit an obstacle, and then we give up. I think about how many times women come to me, and in my own experience as well, and I ask them, how many diets have you been on? How many exercise routines have you tried? How many therapists have you been to? How many supplements do you have sitting in the back of your cabinet at home right now? So I emphasize things that are doable, which is why I love food. I love movements like Qigong, and I love just like this fundamental understanding of who you are, your body, your emotions, your mind, your life. So the second month is based on releasing emotional blockages. And it builds on the first month. So the first month is really understanding your body, understanding these 5 different phases that women move through every month, understanding their organ systems, the channels, how everything's connected, so that when we get to the second month, they already have that intelligence of their physical body. They know who they are, they know how they feel, they know where their symptoms are coming from, and they've already begun that process of healing. And when your physical body is on its way to feeling harmonious and balanced, it opens up the capacity to work on those deeper emotional blockages. So that's why we start with the physical, and why I think it's always important to start with the physical. But it's with the intention and the purpose of diving deeper. Can't just stay at the physical, can't just stay at the surface. There's so much more to what it means to be human.
For sure.
So in that second month, as we dive into the emotional, that's when they start to unravel these deeper blockages and the deeper reasons why they're experiencing physical pain, why they're having emotional pain, and understanding where in the body these emotions are specifically stored, and then releasing them in a way that is very systematic so that it's not overwhelming. So we do it in accordance to their hormonal cycle. There are specific emotions that are ripe for release because they're at the surface at different phases of our hormonal cycle. So anxiety is easier to resolve when we're ovulating because anxiety is stored specifically in the heart. So with that in mind, like you're in your fire element when you're in your ovulatory phase, you're more connected to your heart, you're more communicative, and as such, like you're more in touch with where this anxiety comes from, and you're given the tools and the support and the guidance to actually start to play with that and work through it and take ownership of that emotion. And we do that with all the emotions that relate to all the different organs in the body and all the different hormonal phases. And in that way, it takes something that can feel so chaotic, like emotions, where you're like, oh my God, I'm anxious and I'm depressed and I'm worried about things and I'm really pissed off about that one thing that happened 10 years ago. And it simplifies it so that you don't feel like you can't do it. Yeah, has to be doable. And then the third month is very much devoted to your family dynamics, to unraveling those deeper patterns and themes that have really colored your life, colored your behavioral patterns, your belief systems, and your perception of who you are and where you are in this world, and ensuring that everything flows the way that it needs to flow, so that your environment, your relationships, your perception of your family, and again, like your calling in life, all supports your healing and catapults you forward, so that you're not only this origin point of a ripple, like again, you become the catalyst for other people to change and heal as well. So it's a holistic system that is dynamic and in depth, and I mean, it's the love of my life. So besides my husband, I love him too. But yeah, it's like the greatest love and the greatest passion I have, because witnessing women finally heal it gives everything in my life meaning. It gives everything that I've moved through meaning. And it's lit a fire in my soul.
It's really beautiful the way you kind of, you have such a way to approach it. You know, you have an algorithm to it. And, it's so, what I'm learning about through, my girlfriend when I'm at home, she teaches me about the cycles that women go through. And she's always telling me certain parts of the month, that need to be, supported, and I've seen myself as a man, my role is just to support them, the two women that live in my home, whether it's a 9-year-old woman or, a woman in her 30s. And, I just realized that in order for a woman to really feel empowered, I have to create a foundation for them to feel safe and for them to root themselves, for them to, I'm almost giving like a trampoline effect for them to launch, their feminine self of safety within, so that's the role I play. And I've seen that within myself. And I saw my purpose in that is to make sure I'm taking care of the basics and they take care of everything else. And
Ooh, let's talk about men. I love talking about men.
So that was the thing for me that really spoke to me as I did my inner work, and I started to see that, and I started to cut out certain behaviors for myself that were toxic for myself, my thoughts, my own sexual energy, and those things that needed to support and make sure, you know, my woman that I take care of feels completely supported and in a way where she feels safe and also feels wanted, which is really powerful. But the intelligence I started to see with the woman's cycle was so profound, and realizing the depth of what is going on here. It was so beautiful to see. And I know, like, you know, she made a decision to get off birth control a couple years ago, and did a ton of cambo to bring everything into alignment, because that medicine is really powerful for women because it brings everything into balance. And it also purges out anything that's synthetic. And so one of the things for that is, like, you know, as she started to manifest, you know, the balance of her own cycle and things like that, I started to see myself come into that same fruition. You know, it's still a learning process for me. You know, I'm learning to be more soft around certain areas of the month, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And it's hard, you know, because I don't understand. And so I have to communicate with her when she's working through her own, you know, emotional imbalances during the monthly cycle, which is important and profound to see. You know, I'm still doing it with in respect of the awe, you know, the awe of everything going on. And
it's fascinating though, because
it's super fascinating.
First and foremost, like your girlfriend, like your women, like myself included, we need to know what we're talking about, because that's where so much miscommunication comes from, is not being aware of these phases or these cycles or these energetic and emotional and sexual shifts that we experience throughout the month. Like, that's, you just like summed it up so beautifully. You're such an eloquent speaker. I can listen to you talk all day. Makes sense why you have a podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, like, when we don't understand that we're different people, different beings at different phases of the month, we start to feel like there's something wrong with us. And then we cannot communicate that to our partners. Right. And then we start to feel fucking crazy. We're like, I don't know. I'm so mad. Right. And why you even looking at me is driving me up the wall, or why you tapping your finger is like getting under my skin, or why I'm so needy and emotional, or why I'm more sexually charged at one time of the month and then I don't feel called to that at another time. So then you start thinking like, well, there's something wrong with my libido. There's something wrong with our relationship. And it's why, like, it starts with women, you know? It starts with us knowing our bodies and our cycles and our rhythms, and then being able to communicate this clearly to our partners. But it takes a strong partner. It takes a strong man who is open and aware and willing to listen, to make it so that we do feel safe, you know, so that we can talk about these things, so that we don't sound woo-woo or crazy, or like we're, you know, just aligning with the moon cycles, which is something I talk about. But it's so empowering and so centering to know that there's a reason for why we feel the way that we feel. And I really think that that's across the board, not just for women in our different phases, but when you can make sense of things, when there's something tangible or logical or practical to it. Like, I love that balance, you know, especially in times of our life where it feels chaotic and it feels really hard and it doesn't make sense. If you can introduce this possibility, just a little seed of possibility that, like, there's meaning to this. I trust that at some point this will make sense. I trust that at some point, like, it'll click. But you said something earlier as well, just about the divine feminine, the divine masculine. Like, I met my husband 7 or 8 years ago. 7 years? I forget what year it is even now, honestly. 7 years ago at an ayahuasca retreat. And he was the catalyst for so much of my healing, because I needed him. I needed a man who was so rooted in who he was and had done so much work on himself and could be that steadying force and presence for me. I needed someone who could support me on my journey to self-discovery, because without him, I felt adrift. you know? So being with him taught me how to cultivate his qualities for myself. He taught me how to be steadier. He taught me how to be more committed. He taught me how to be more in touch with like my divine masculine and my inner power and my yang and my strength and my sense of self, you know? He brought light into my life. And that's the thing about men that's so magical when they're in balance, at least, is that they're this just extraordinary expression of yang. And yang in Chinese medicine is about light. It's daytime, it's movement, it's change, it's upward mobility. It's glorious, you know? It's like the sun. And women are inherently more yin. So we're more introverted, more quiet. We move a little bit slower. We're more flexible. We feel more at peace in the evening and in that quiet space within ourselves. So when you meet a person who can inspire that balance within you and can make you see yourself differently and see the world differently and activate the cultivation of those opposing forces, so that you can become like a more dynamic balance of yang and yin. And for men, what you just said, like learning how to be softer with your girlfriend at those times of the month where she needs more quiet, more understanding, more support. Like that's how we find harmony within ourselves. It doesn't have to come in the form of a partner. It doesn't have to necessarily mean opposite sex. It's very much about like yin and yang. So finding your balance within another person so you can find it within yourself.
That's so well put. And when you talk about the yin and yang, or the yin and yang, what Americans want to call it, yin and yang, it's that circle, right?
Right.
So, in Alan Watts' teachings, who like breaks down everything so well, he talks about this yin and yang in the circle of what he's referring to as you have the black and the white, the light and the darkness within, and then you have a circle of each of the opposite within that light and dark circle. He talks about how there's a meaning to it, right? And it is balance. It's finding harmony with both sides, and that is what Chinese medicine is derived around, this balancing act, right? But the important part of that was that it is zooming out and seeing that it's a circle unifying the two. And that is the most important part about it, is to unify both. Whether you see it in anything in life, good and bad, however you want to decipher it, right? So that's the idea of that is to find the merging of the two. And that's really important to see.
Yeah.
And I think for me, when you're talking about me trying to be soft, for some reason, when I'm supposed to be soft around those areas, I have this innate intention to be actually more of a bully and like teasing at those times, which is the weirdest thing. Like, I don't know what it is. It's like this opposite of what I want to do. And it's super weird. And she knows what I'm doing. And she's like, why can't you just be nice to me at this time? And I was like, well, I don't know why it's like that. It just is, and it's just, there's also good in finding humor in everything as well, and it's just really profound to see like how intricate all this is, and if you can link it all up, it all makes sense. But the education part you're speaking of is why we're here today, is to bring forth that education of, what's really going on with your body.
Yeah.
Even like me relearning through my own, practices in Lao Kun Do, Kung Fu, and Qigong techniques, I'm learning about men's sexual energy and how important it is to understand it, because it is your life force that is held there. And in order to understand that, it's like some men would be like, especially a firefighter, be like, what the hell are you talking about, man? You got to hold your life force. So the concept is to hold your life force, because it is creative energy. It's raw power. And so some masters would hold their power for so long because they know they can punch harder in battle when they would hold that energy, which is it's pretty interesting to think about, right? But it makes sense. If you're giving life, you're holding that power, right? Mm-hmm. That seed of you is within you and you're holding it in, you can channel that more. And I'm still learning more about that because I'm being taught by pieces of it here and there, almost like a breadcrumbs in a way, because it's so hard to ingest and integrate it in my own life, my own practice of who I am. But I had to relearn, from not having any education about that growing up, and just like having, and it brought up some certain things like having an addiction to porn, which is a huge thing that came up for a lot of men going and working through therapy and things like that. They realized that they had this huge addiction to pornography and it was ruining their relationships. And they realized, hey, what's the core root of this? Well, you have an addiction to porn. And that was the poor part about ending so many or causing so many divorces and things like that, because you're putting your energy into something else and you weren't putting that gratifying part of yourself into your partner. And that was something I had to look at when I was relearning all this stuff for my own self and my own messages for my truth, which is a huge thing for young men to really understand of what's going on here with that. And it's ultimately a distraction to keep you from your manhood, to lower your testosterone levels, and ultimately not letting you fully embrace your power as a man. And so I think talking about this is really hard for some people to listen to, but it's the cold, hard truth of what's going on here. And if we can see like the programming that's going on within America, it is ultimately to keep you distracted from finding your truest self. Whether it's being addicted to looking at a blue screen on your phone, whether it's trying to numb yourself with alcohol because you can't take the pain any longer, whether it's all these other things that are happening to keep you distracted from the truth. And the truth is ultimately where we are right now. You have to find your own truth. Truth is relative. It is how you define it. And there are, I guess, universal truths that you cannot change, but there are truths within that you have to find and go deep to find yourself. And I think when we find our truth and we dig deep within the root of self, when we root deep with what that truth means to us, we find that meaning. And that is the key to the compass of finding your path in life, is that meaning that comes through with you and it resonates deep within your soul. You could feel it. That is the point when you come into your life, and it only comes through deep surrender. And I've only learned that through my own personal depth of my own experiences of having to find that myself. And I think for me, it came a marker to say no to certain things. And when I would say no, it would rub people the wrong way, because I just spoke within the truth of myself. And I can speak on a friend that I had who I was just like, no, dude, you're disrespecting me. And our friendship ended. It was cut and severed because I said no and wanted to respect myself from, years of joking until I realized it wasn't a joke anymore. And I'm in my 30s. I'm not a 24-year-old, kid who's just partying all the time how I used to do. But he didn't get it. And, that came through standing up for myself, for what felt right. So I think a part of this too is, the path of healing comes with consequences, with things that need to leave, family, when you have to stand up to them when they've been treating you disrespectfully for your whole life. And at some point, self-respect comes into the compass of your true north, of where you need to follow. And, having respect for yourself will lead into having respect for others. And then you will live a life of harmonious intent. Because like when we're not in that space, we're feeling disempowered. We're feeling a point of like a blind spot or a weakness within the peripherals of our mind that we can't quite understand. But when you start to do and maneuver yourself within that place of self, that self-worth starts to manifest and starts to build and starts to create this blue flame within that starts to ignite. And that's what this detonation is here to do. And that's why, the greatest leaders were rebellious, harmoniously rebellious, like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. They were here to make a change because they knew something wasn't right. And they were willing to sacrifice everything for what they believed in. And so if you can take that concept and do it with yourself within, look inward and find out what that is for you, your life will begin to change dramatically with your health, with your body, the way it operates. And the way you see yourself will ultimately change. And that's the type of work and the message I really want people to listen to on this podcast, because it's not just about this thing that people are killing themselves and trying to serve humanity in the communities we serve. It's not about that. It's about self-empowerment. It's about the way you see yourself. And that's the change that I really want to see, because it is so hard to do. And that's what matters most. And you'll see the change after we all start doing it together. I don't know where that came from, but it just came out. But
That's beautiful.
so
Yeah.
I think one part to this is I don't know if people understand ayahuasca, and how much it's served you. But I know how powerful that medicine can be, and there's been some misnomers around on what that medicine does. If you don't mind sharing a little more about that for you, and how it's what it's done for you, because I know that that people are seeking everything right now, and they're desperate, and that is what takes people to a travel to Peru or Costa Rica to go do some ayahuasca, because they've heard it from other people, but they don't understand exactly what it is or what's going on. And if you don't mind, I know it's so hard to break it down. I know it is, but from your own personal experience, with being a student of the medicine, if you don't mind sharing, however that impacted you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, even thank you for even asking. It's there are so many misconceptions around it, so many, and it's again one of the reasons why getting that message that I needed to talk about it wasn't well received by me. I was like, I don't think that many of the people who ended up being leaders or change makers in their time really wanted to do it,
Yeah.
It's not something that we seek. It's something that we're called to do. And my maestro, Maestra Estella is my primary teacher, but she has her own apprentices as well who support her in ceremony. But one of our maestros, Maestro Guillermo, he said many are called to the path, but few actually choose it. And many people have expressed interest in drinking ayahuasca. Many people have expressed interest in working with me, but there is so much resistance because it's not just knowing that something can help, it's actually taking responsibility and making the commitment and doing it. It's
sure.
not enough to just know. You have to back it up with action and with choice. And with Aya, it's one of the reasons why, I've never drank in the States. And it's not that I think that it doesn't have its place. But for me personally, I don't see it as this one-off thing. I see it as a path. I see it as something that you're called to work with. And yes, you can dabble. I'm like, everybody do what you want to do. I'm not a controlling person. Like, if you want to have a ceremony and you want to experience that healing, if you want to work through some shit, by all means, go ahead. It is powerful. It is profound. And with the right support, with the right intention, with the right integration afterwards, you can experience extraordinary shifts and changes in your life. But in terms of my experience and my perspective with it, there are two phases of working with the medicine. The first phase is very much about your own healing. It is about clearing out those blockages, bringing yourself back into balance, back into harmony, unraveling those many, many matrices and webs that we've woven around ourselves throughout our own personal experiences in life, and coming back into communion with who we are born to be. So that is the first phase, and everyone is different. Some people, depending on their upbringing, the culture in which they were raised, their family dynamics, any number of things, a few ceremonies, and they cross that threshold into learning. But for many of us, especially coming from the West, coming from America, coming from many parts of Europe, we need a little bit more help. We need a little bit more support in not only healing our physical body, but developing that emotional intelligence to begin to purge those blockages and that spiritual sickness and that sense of disconnection from ourselves and from the earth and from our purpose here. So in my case, it was around the 15th or 16th ceremony. And this was with several years. I've worked with ayahuasca for 8 years now. It was around the 15th ceremony that something just finally clicked. And I almost didn't want to believe it because I'd been in pain and on this path of healing for 24, 25 years, trying to figure out what was going on with me. And you spoke about this earlier around identity. When we suffer for an extended period of time, we oftentimes start to identify with that pain, with that disease, with that diagnosis. And it can be earth-shattering to experience that shift in identity and to have to let go of the part of ourselves that felt broken all of these years. So for me, like, it was this almost like shocking moment when in ceremony, I just heard like, you're done, like you're healed. I was like, no. Like I know that there's more. I know that I'm still fucked up. Like I need more help. Like I don't believe you. And it was a full week of processing additional ceremonies to really make peace with that and to let myself step into this new phase of learning. So the reason why I choose to go to the rainforest, to the jungle, to work with the medicine is because in that learning phase, it's when you finally get to reconnect. You're reconnecting throughout the entire process, but you're also disconnecting from so much that it's hard to even make sense of what that connection really means. But the reason why I choose to be in the jungle is because ayahuasca is the great connector. It connects us not only to ourselves and to our purpose and to who we are, it connects us to the land. It connects us to these other plants, and it connects us to this depth of knowledge and this wellspring of, oh my God, just so much, the universe, that it is a blessing to be in a place where you can really learn. So I work with plants. I don't know if you've spoken about this in your other podcasts or if this is something you're familiar with. I imagine you are, given how well-versed you are in so many things. But ayahuasca and being in ceremony is a means of learning how to not only heal yourself, but learning how to heal other people by becoming in touch with the vast pharmacopoeia of plant teachers and plant medicines that are at our disposal, many of which are non-psychoactive. So the remainder of my ceremonies, from 15 to I don't know how many at this time, 30 or 40, has been very much about learning. So learning directly from plants, learning how to heal, what their uses are, how to apply them. I know that there are origin stories with Combo about this, being in ceremony and asking for guidance and needing help for their people and having that vision. So instead of the visions just being about you and where your blockages are and unraveling all these layers of trauma and making sense of things or having these out-of-body celestial experiences, whatever they may be, powerful, profound, beautiful, I see ceremony as this very, very functional and very practical opportunity to learn directly from ayahuasca under her tutelage and guidance, and to speak with the plants directly so that I can help other people to heal. So when we're in that space, like when we're on retreat specifically, but I say retreats, like I don't go on retreats anymore, when we go to the jungle. And then in my own life now, I'm consistently working with plants, with plant teachers in order to learn their wisdom, in order to help my people heal. Yeah, so it's both, and it depends on what your path is. Many people stop after they have healed, after they've cleansed, after they've cleared all of their blockages and come back into balance. And then oftentimes another healing modality comes into their life. In my case, it was going back to school and becoming an acupuncturist and very clearly being told by the medicine, like, this is your path. This is your medicine, go back to school. I was like, I don't want to go back to school. That sounds terrible, but okay. And for other people, it comes in different forms, whether it's Combo or Iboga or Sananga or Hongos, whatever it may be. Like, people find their own path. And in my case, I don't want to be a maestra. I don't want to be an ayahuasquero. Like, that doesn't speak to me, but I consider myself an ambassador of the medicine. I'm an acupuncturist and I guess I'd say a vegetalista. Yeah.
Wow. So kind of what you're saying is that, many people who have taken the path of what you're speaking of, this medicine, it speaks to you in a woman's voice. It's been referred to as the great mother or grandmother ayahuasca. There's a voice that comes through the medicine and it speaks to you directly about your life. And after you take the courage to work through the emotional debris, the blockages, what you want to refer to them as, or memories of things that have been suppressed, feelings that have been suppressed, the teachings come through in a very spectacular way that unlocks your superhuman nature, number one, to where your cognitive abilities begin to expand to supernatural behaviors. That's the only way I can really describe it. So in that essence, we carry these imbalances, but after the imbalances comes the form of what we are supposed to be. And in that form, we realize how powerful we really are. And that inner guidance begins to get louder and more askew to the truth, and more importantly, known to what's important to you, important in your path. And that's medicine outside of medicine, realizing that you are the medicine, and you hold the capacity to really change everything beyond the work you're doing and the lessons you're really receiving. And so what's really important too is that you're learning the connection here is with nature, and realizing that we are not higher than thou in this planet. And I know I've seen a lot of people have come across this concept in the medicine of ayahuasca. And the reason why the medicine is coming out of the jungle is that the planet is shifting into a different consciousness. The planet is going through an evolutionary process to where it is in a different part of the galaxy at this time, of which different higher dimensional frequencies are hitting the planet in order for it to transform. So as this planet transforms, Mother Earth is changing us who are living on planet Earth. It's not global warming. It is something else beyond your understanding. And it is something special that's happening with all of us right now, and something that's happening within this planet. And we have to realize that, and this is a message that's been derived from many people who have received this same exact message. The planet is shifting, and we have to shift with it. That is a part of our calling here on this planet right now. And it is a humanitarian shift and evolution of a species that's happening before our eyes. And all the chaos that is occurring right now, everything that you see before you, everything that is existing right now, that is not in resonance with this planetary shift, has to crumble, and it has to change, and the truth will come out. As you can see, everything, if you watch the news, I don't watch the news, but I watch tidbits of what's going on.
I have
you know
no
what I
idea
mean?
what's going on in the world.
But you can see like the truth is coming out from Epstein to P. Diddy to the politics that's creating a divide within each other. You can see the distractions that are showing up right now: war, turmoil, poverty, hunger, whatever it is. It's happening because we have to see the truth in order for us to make that change together. And that is a unification piece I was talking about. I kind of wanted to play that in with that yin and yang. It's the merging of two in order to find unity with all. And this is something that I've come across just like through studying so many different things recently. I'm trying to find, hey, what's the answer here? How can I help firefighters and first responders and police officers? What's going on here? And I had to zoom out a little bit and see what's going on here, and see there's a common thread that's happening at this time, and realizing the invisible self is what's need to be seen. Another paradox, right? How can you see the invisible self? Well, it's felt. It is something you feel deeply within. That's what this medicine is here to show you, is to see the invisible self, without your physical eyes, but the internal eyes and the internal worlds you create within yourself.
Yeah.
And
I would say ceremony is also this. There's no time or space in ceremony, things, you don't know where things are going or the rate at which they're moving, but you experience what you're talking about in the midst of ceremony. In a very short period of time, you experience things crumble. You experience things being destroyed, and you experience the rebirth of yourself, this more pure, true, authentic version of yourself. And what I found is that it's a mirror for the world as a whole. I always say with Chinese medicine, like the yin yang and the 5 elements, they manifest as a microcosm and a macrocosm. And ceremony is like an entire lifetime contained within a few hours. So it makes sense why there's this call to take our experiences in ceremony and to witness how they amplify and magnify across these other realms in the real world. But it's like, in order to recognize them and witness them and see those patterns and those themes, I think that we have to experience them within ourselves first. Experience what it means to let things crumble and die, to let go of those attachments in order for something more pure to emerge. And even what you're talking about right now, like in the culture and my husband, bless him, he reads the news, so he keeps me abreast. He filters it for me so I don't have to rummage through it. But everything that you're talking about, like watching things come to the light so that they can be burned off and crumble and die for this new era to be ushered in. It's really, it's fascinating to watch and fascinating to bear witness to it. And instead of feeling helpless, because that's one thing that just drives me crazy with people, it's the reason why I don't really subscribe to the news, is because people watch it and they feel like the whole world is burning and they feel helpless and like everything's going to shit. And I'm like, kinda, but that's a good thing. Things that are out of alignment, that are out of balance need to be purged in order for something more true to come through and to shine and to kind of take over a little bit in the best way.
Totally. It's the great purge of what it's being described. Whatever is not in resonance has to leave. And the kicking and screaming that's going to happen with it's going to happen. It's going to make some noise. One thing that I came across recently I wanted to share with you was, I have a really good friend who had done this thing called quantum wellness. And it's a woman who does this technique of what she just gets your name. And I think her website is quantumwellnessonline.com. That's what it was. And, she broke down for me my own imbalances. All you do is you give her name and I think your age, and that's it. And any symptoms that come up with you. And she broke down this outline for myself of everything that I had in my body to a T. And it was exactly everything that I was feeling, because she broke down like a four component portion of it. And some of it has Chinese medicine, the meridian ley lines of the body in it too, that are out of balance or misalignment. And the beginning has these 4 things. You have, parasitic, bacterial, fungal, or mold infections in your body, which she told me I have, fungal infection, which I already knew. I have candida overgrowth, which is super hard to get rid of. And I'm still working at that. That's my own process of healing. But then there was some of the other imbalances that she would show, which had some of the core values, which were the belief systems or the subconscious mind speaking to me through my body. And it laid it out in a quantified detail of what was happening. And it was so profound and super simple. And so one of the things that she goes into is measuring out your percentage of your heart messages to your body and then your brain messages to your body. And then so she also quantifies your immune system percentage that's operating within your body as well. And it came down to like just every minute detail that needed to be shown to be released. And then at the very end, she remotely energizes the areas that were misaligned. And then, it was just really, really fascinating. But one of the things that she does is this work from Dr. Bradley Nelson, who studies heart walls. And so one of the things she does is she checks if you have a heart wall blockage. And those heart wall blockages she can clear for you. And those come from just hurt that you carry internally, that you just put up these walls to protect yourself. It's a subconscious way of protecting yourself from other people. But these heart walls she can clear as well, which I find to be super fascinating, because a heart wall can interfere with your biological health, your emotional health, and being able to connect with a partner or someone you want to be with for the rest of your life. If you carry those up, there's going to be a lot of, I would say, struggle if you carry those up. And when you're speaking of this beautiful medicine of ayahuasca, that is a heart-based medicine, in which it speaks to your heart, and that's the way we are supposed to navigate our life. So if anyone is curious about doing anything, you should reach out to this woman, because it was super simple and cheap. And she just lay it out for you exactly what's going on. I was so caught off guard, because my friend mentioned to me, because we initially were going to use her for our dog we had, because he was super aggressive and we needed help, and she does it for pets.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's pretty significant. If you're wanting to go away from Western medicine and finding the underlying cause of something at a subconscious level, or whatever the imbalance is, you can find out, through going to someone like this. And before, I was told by my mentor, like he was telling me, like, you should have what do they call a medical medium, who can just read your energetic body and tell you, okay, you have an imbalance here, you have an imbalance there. It comes from this, it comes from that. And then you can kind of get a better grasp on your health, and realizing subconsciously what you may be carrying, whether it's self-conflict, whether it's a lack of self-love, whether it's self-hatred, whether it's shame, grief, or whatever is coming up for you. There's something there that's deeply rooted that you just have to shine light on. That's all you have to do. That's the easy way to say it. And through all this, but I don't know if there's any other thing that you like to address with Chinese medicine, and maybe like the 5 elements or Qigong, on how healing through this modality really brings like the balance of your own life, or you see through others, etc.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to wrap our conversation up. Yeah. So when I read someone, especially virtually, because the bulk of my business is actually online now, I read their birth chart and then balance that with what I'm seeing in front of me, being able to read their face, being able to read their symptoms, being able to read their body. But in Chinese medicine, it's similar to what you've spoken about, where everyone has their primary constitution. This is their main element. In Chinese medicine, there are 81 possible combinations of your main constitution, your emotional response, and your challenge and calling in life. So with that in mind, I look at someone's chart and I'm given a clear idea as to how this person sees the world, how they see themselves, their physical imbalances, what diseases they're prone to, and it helps me make very specific recommendations based on what they need to do in order to bring their physical body into balance, their emotional well-being, and their spirituality. And then we have our emotional response to things, which is where we go when we are spread thin and stressed out, and it is like the least balanced version of ourself takes the reins. So we all have different emotional responses. Some people are more quiet. Some people are like the perfect hostess, and they're like, no one look at the fire in the kitchen, like everything's fine. Everything's fine. Let's just sweep it under the rug and keep going and move on. Other people get very angry. They have a lot of self-directed anger, a lot of criticism, a lot of self-directed hatred and inner tension, which over time can ripple out and affect other people as well. And they're like a volcano that's ready to blow at any given time. Other people respond more from a fear-based response where they feel paralyzed and like they can't take that step forward. Even though they know what they want to do, they get stuck in that indecisiveness and that fear and that worry. So it's knowing who you are constitutionally, how you think about things, how you approach things, what your body is like, where you store your pain, your tension, what diseases you're prone to, and implementing a strategy that will help you bring yourself back into balance. And then, like we spoke a little bit about before, everyone has a unique challenge and a unique calling. And it is only through navigating the challenges of our life that we can live in alignment with our Ming, which in Chinese medicine, Ming or Ming Yuan, translates to destiny, fate. It's our calling. But I combine that with face reading, because our face demonstrates our life experiences and how we have moved through the world. And I'm able to read much more about a person's upbringing, their family dynamics, where they tend to hold tension and stress in their body, the quality of their shen, which is their spirit, how connected they are to their heart. And it's a way to bring sense and structure and something really simple to something that can be so deeply complex, like our health. So I know we've talked about so many complex things today, which I love. I'm always down to dig in and get into that, that 90% beneath the surface. But really, like, what's most important to me is that things are simple to implement so that it feels accessible and it feels doable. And it's why I love Chinese medicine, and I love teaching it so that we can implement it for ourselves.
It's interesting you say that, because I was getting at my acupuncture done yesterday, and my acupuncturist was reading my birth chart to me, and it was telling me everything while I was laying on the table. He was telling me like I am a golden snake, and he was literally reading up like everything that I felt internally to be so true. And it was just like, it was just funny how you literally brought that up in alignment with what happened yesterday. Super fascinating stuff, and how you have fate that is determined by your original blueprint of where you were born. And it's not necessarily, it doesn't have to be astrology, or if you want to put it in that singular way of seeing it, it's a horizon that's beyond what we determine, and through the medicine that we're approaching it, it's so interesting how you're doing that, because you're taking a bigger picture way of seeing and approach of the health, and what determines how you respond to everything on an emotional level that could bring the imbalances up. So super fascinating the way you've done that. And I've had so many different charts read to me, and different Ayurvedic medicine and other different medicines that had been shown to me, like certain parts that were interesting, and being more open to it, as opposed to my old stubborn self, who just thought it was all bullshit. Mm-hmm. I just started to see that there is an alignment, and it rung true every single time, even though I didn't want to listen. And so that was part of my own process, was stopping my stubbornness from creating a limitation for myself. And that was like one of the bigger things for my own process of healing, was stopping that, which is really hard for someone in the line of work that I work in, because it's so logical, and so everything has to be so precise and analyzed to every minute detail, when at some point it doesn't have to be done that way. And you kind of just let go of what can go beyond your understanding, which is a beautiful part of an evolution process for oneself, is to do that.
It needs to be both. That's
right.
The thing. That's what comprises balance and unity, is that there needs to be structure and practicality and analyses and details and things that feel tangible, and that needs to be balanced with things that feel intangible and emotional and esoteric and expansive and confounding. Like, there has to be that balance, and oftentimes, like with all medicines, I look at modern medicine, I'm like, there's nothing wrong with it. I love Western medicine. My background's in Western medicine, but it's out of balance. It's just one side of things. And that's why we're seeing the emergence of all of these. I hate the word alternative health. I think of it so much more as like ancient natural medicine. Like, it's why we're seeing the emergence of these medicines in our culture to create harmony and balance. I believe that there's a place for both. And it's it's always something that I emphasize in conversations with other people and with my patients and clients especially.
I always like to refer to alternative medicine in relation to alternative rock. Because if you're going to listen to the same music on whatever radio station, let's say K Rock, right, or KLOS, classic rock, you got the same tune over and over and over, the same songs you hear over and over and over, and you go and hear alternative rock. Like, just think about like Nirvana. When Nirvana came out, everyone's like, what is that? What is that sound? I've never heard that before. And it just like grasped everyone. Like the alternative rock gives you like that feel of like that's something new and it feels different, and it has like this edge to it. And you're like, I'm tired of hearing this old U2 song on the radio. I want to hear this alternative new way of being, new way of thinking. And that's the way I've really rung true with some of that concept of relating it to alternative medicine. But in relation, it's like alternative medicine has actually been used for way longer and has been supersized, supersized as the Western medicine, even though it works really well. It's just, you want to be open to the different perspectives, right? And see things differently instead of being like, hey, this is the way, this is the only way, and that's it. Because this may not speak to you if you're not interested in Chinese medicine, but there are other ways to see it, just don't be so closed off. That is more so the lesson in this. And then this conversation is, when you close yourself off, you're limiting yourself to one thing that you're used to or you're comfortable with. And that's what keeps us wrapped up in the same old story. And I think when we get caught up in that same old story, you just get caught up with yourself, and you just, people who are suffering are tired of suffering. So they reach out for other things. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty. It's why I love the word holistic, because it's expansive, It's like that's really, at its core, that's what ayahuasca is. It's about expansion, like expanding what you believed was possible for yourself, for your body, for your mind. Like, you literally see neural pathways expand and grow. And I think that's why I love the world as it is right now. And I love where it's going, is that it's so expansive. And there is like this place for so many different people and so many different medicines to really emerge. And it's like, that's the world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where we can find something that resonates with us and feel connected to it, and not like we need to hide in the shadows when we speak about it. And it's again why, like, even with alternative practitioners, when they're so anti-Western medicine, I'm like, that has a place too. Like, that's emerged for a reason. And now it's just about finding that harmony and that balance and that unification that you've been talking about this entire time. Like, there needs to be a place for all of these things, for the aspects of these things that truly work, that true medicine.
Yeah, I think Western medicine is changing to the point where, we're seeing that the old system's not really working very well. So certain doctors are like, okay, there has to be some type of change here. What's going on with how I do my practice? And I, working in the field as a paramedic and going to the hospitals all the time, I know those doctors who really care and who really know that there needs to be a change in the system. And because the system is been shown to be broken at this point. Everyone is seeing that, especially in our line of work, how we're transporting people to the hospital. The hospitals are so packed. And I think the lockdown really showed us what's going on here. And everyone had this more of like an awakening moment to what needs to happen, and it has to be a change in that field, But it doesn't happen with just one person. It happens with the masses that have to want that change. So that being said, I think we're going to close up here. And if people want to reach out to you and check out your work, so on and so forth, how do they do that?
Yeah, thank you. Instagram's always one of the easiest ways because you have that direct line of communication to me. It's The Balanced Healer, BALANCED. There's a D in there, but The Balanced Healer. My name is Hana. You can also find me over at thebalancedwomansystem.com. But I love to hear from people. So shoot me a DM, give me a follow, send me an email, and I'd love to connect.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Hana. I really appreciate your work, and there's always a special place on each episode. And I swear, when you were telling me your story in the beginning, I was like really getting teared up because it was a really powerful message to hear about your story and everything going on. But there is liberation and freedom at the very end, which is really cool and so profound to see the human spirit overcome everything and anything, and that's what I want to instill in everyone, is that we all carry that together, and you have to find it. Sometimes you got to dig deeper to find that within you, but that's a quality that I'm willing to stand by and respect, because it's so wonderful to see when someone is able to go there with themselves and be with themselves and find who they are. So thank you so much. And just to close up here, just really want to talk about our sponsor, and they're the ones who make this podcast capable of all the equipment that's being supplied, and the sound and the video. Thank you so much, Frontline Behavioral Wellness. They are such a great company in which they offer support for firefighters, first responders that are in need of some assistance with whatever it is, whether it's anxiety, depression, suicide ideation. You're just someone to talk to. They have their own peer support group program. And so if you want to reach out to them, or a Sarah, which is a Sarah Health on sarahhealth.com, reach out to them. And they have their hotline, 661-877-7241. That is 24/7, open and available for and dedicated to first responders. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you can just like and subscribe and follow our Instagram, support us, because it supports the algorithm and how we can reach everyone on how to get the message out for finding healing and solace with ourselves in order for us to support humanity and the communities we serve. So thank you, everyone, and take care.